Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. It's wonderful to see you. As you know, I'm the Director of Development. It's been my pleasure to be collaborating with the college for over 6 years, where I've been advocating and promoting its great work. The college continues to do great things in the community, all of which would not be possible without the generous support of people like you. So just this past year, the Community Voices Clinic delivered over 500 hours of mental health services to Bethlehem area school students and community members who wouldn't have had that otherwise, that access to that therapy. In regards to our autism services, we now serve over 6 families with research proven practices. And like we're going to talk about today, we're helping create great educational leaders. So for example, our very own Bethlehem Area School District Superintendent, Dr. Joe Roy, is a College of Ed program grad. And you're about to hear from two other great educational leaders. So just to get started, a little bit of housekeeping. Know that this session is being recorded. We're going to be sharing it in other outlets and areas. And we will have Q&A at the end. And because it is a small group, I invite you to just, chime in and ask questions directly, or you can put them in the chat. And then I would like to introduce Dean Gaudelli, but I know the majority of you know him. He's our 8th Dean of the College of Ed. And most recently, he was announced a Vice Provost of Innovation. So we're very excited about that. Before he came to us, he joins us from the Teachers College of Columbia University. And as you know, his career spans 30 years as a classroom teacher, researcher, professor, and seasoned administrator. So, and also prominent international scholar, and his research areas focus on global citizenship, education, and teacher education development. So Dean Gaudelli, over to you.
Thanks so much, Annie. Thank you all for joining us for this outstanding session on excellence in leadership. And just so happy to have 2 of our Shining Star alum with us today, Harrison Bailey and Richard Gordon, to share with us some insights about their work in leadership, particularly in urban communities. And I'm really excited to hear what they have to say. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Dr. Beachum. Floyd Beachum is on the call as well. He's a full professor in the program of educational leadership and has been with us for now 12 years. Floyd's work is in leadership in urban education, and as you all know, and he's also the Bennett Professor of urban school leadership. And Peter Bennett, I know, is on the call as well. So thank you, Peter, for your generous support. And so I wanted to just frame this a bit by saying a little bit about ed leadership and what we're working on. You know the UPAL program, which is focused on developing urban leaders for schools and urban communities. And we're really proud to say that we're now in our 8th cohort, have 144 graduates, some of them among us, and they serve the Lehigh Valley and far beyond it as well. And so that's super exciting that we have such great work happening there, and a shout out to the program and ed leadership for that. Of course, they're scholars as well, and we have new searches going on for new faculty to join the ranks of EDL. And we also have grant work being done. And so the state of Pennsylvania has awarded $500,000 to the college via the program in ed leadership to support residency programs in urban schools. So we're very much focused on the support of leaders in urban contexts, and super proud of the fact that 2 of our graduates are excelling at that work. And really that's the focus today, is turning it over to them and learning what we can from their outstanding efforts in their community. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Floyd Beachum. And again, thank you all for coming and joining us today. Great to see you from the fully vaccinated campus of Lehigh University, where I currently am nearly fully vaccinated. So I want to give a shout out for that. We're excited about that too. Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon. Thank you, Dean Gaudelli. I want to thank everyone who put this together. This was a wonderful event, a great opportunity for us to all talk about education. Thank you to all the people behind the scenes and over in events. Thank you to Annie, Christine. I want to publicly go ahead and sort of give kudos to all those folks. And thank you to our distinguished panelists here, our guests who will be engaging in this conversation today. And also thank you to everyone who've taken the time at your lunch break. We know this is critical time, so thank you for taking time at lunch to talk with us today. But I would certainly be remiss if I did not recognize Mr. Peter Bennett, who's the chair I hold here is the Bennett Professorship in Urban School Leadership. And I certainly want to recognize Peter because through his vision and his generous support that we've been able to do so many things, but me personally have been able to do so much in just education in general. And it's primarily the reason I came to Pennsylvania was to assume this position and to do this work. So thank you, Peter. Good to see you on the call. Now, for the rest of us, we are here for the purposes of education. And if you're like me, then you believe in that education it means so much to our students. In some of my own work, I've discussed the ways in which education, of course, is a vehicle for career readiness. Yes, education also can support us in our democratic and furthering a democratic society. Yes. However, I've also discovered that education in and of itself is a source of liberation for our students, all the way from the time when I was a teacher in a rural classroom in Selma, Alabama, teaching at high school, all the way until now in the 21st century. Education is a source of liberation. It can liberate our students from poverty. It can liberate our students in terms of thinking about social equity. It can liberate our students in terms of entrepreneurship and financial freedom. So education is the key. But in order for us to engage in education, we need great educators and we need great educational leaders. So this leads us to where we are right now. We have today with us Principal Richard Gordon and Principal Harrison Bailey. These are two alums of Lehigh University. They are nationally recognized, state recognized, award-winning professionals who are going to be joining us in this great conversation. And as I have in writing here, it says they are leaders not only leaders in the field of education, but accomplished masters in the art of school leadership and change. And all of that will be encompassed in our conversation. So first, I would like to introduce Principal Richard Gordon. Richard Gordon received his MED in Educational Leadership with us here at Lehigh University and has been named the 2021 National Principal of the Year by the National Association of Secondary School Principals. For over the last 2 years, Principal Gordon's work at Robeson High School, and if you look, you can see the banner in back of him there in case you didn't know. His work at Robeson in West Philadelphia led to truancy rates decreasing by 22%, graduation rates now averaging 95%. School suspension rates fell below 5%, and student safety inside and outside of the building became a model for the city of Philadelphia. So at this time, we certainly want to recognize Principal Richard Gordon to our conversation. So great to have you here. Also, we would like to recognize here for the local crowd, Dr. Harrison Bailey. Dr. Bailey received his master's degree in special education from Lehigh University and his principal certification from our college in the College of Education. He's recognized for his exceptional leadership here at Bethlehem's local Liberty High School. And if you've never seen this campus, it's a great campus, a wonderful campus. It's big. That's what I think every time I drive by there. He has been named Pennsylvania's Principal Association 2021 Pennsylvania Secondary Principal of the Year, another great award. Dr. Bailey turned Liberty into a trauma-informed high school over 3 years ago. He created the Liberty High School Mental Health Center, and it's staffed by mental health professionals, which features a peace room for struggling students to visit and decompress. These are all exceptional educational innovations. So at this time, we also want to recognize Dr. Bailey to our conversation today. Welcome, welcome. All right, so here's basically how we're going to do it. We have a few questions, and I'm going to ask a very broad question, and we'd like for each principal to answer the question. So we'll start with Principal Gordon first. Principal Gordon, how did your personal background and story prepare you for your current leadership position?
Wow. Well, first of all, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for this wonderful opportunity to be here. I can honestly say, but nothing prepares you for the leadership journey of being in the principalship, to be quite frank. But one of the things that I can honestly say that has been a great asset for me has really been my connection with my students and really being able to know that I traveled the road that they currently travel on each and every day. I am person. I'm someone who grew up in poverty in Camden, New Jersey. I'm a product of divorce. So I have lived with one parent or the other at one point or another, where I spent, time without my family. One of my parents, out of the home. I've had a father who was incarcerated 4 times, either by the state or the federal government at one point or another. And so, I bring up all those things because it has really grown my empathy for a lot of the challenges that a lot of our students face each and every day. And so it's also given me the great insight into sharing with our students the understanding that despite those challenges, that it is our obligation to overcome those challenges, while at the same time, we have to make sure that we have a school that is an educational environment that provides the opportunity to provide support, empathy, and access to opportunities for those students that are actually experiencing a number of challenges, and that that's ingrained in our mission and our vision and our practices every single day. And so to be able to have that opportunity to be able to have these very frank conversations, not just with our students, but also with our families too, to let them know that they have a voice here, that they get to express themselves each and every day, to share what they're truly feeling, what they're truly experiencing, and to understand that an educational environment is not just to provide learning opportunities for students, but it's also an opportunity and a platform to provide advocacy to support our students when we have to go through, city leaders and community leaders, just to make sure that their resources are available to support our families outside of school as well. These are the experiences that I've had as a principal for the last 11 years. I'm working on now year 11. That has allowed me the opportunity to really engage our students and our families to affect change that really benefits them to the best of the best that we can possibly provide it.
Thank you. Dr. Bailey, same question. How did your personal background and story prepare you for your current leadership position?
Sure. And similar to Richard, I want to just thank everyone for having this and inviting us to it. Certainly, as Richard stated, there is nothing that prepares you for the principalship other than being in the seat. It is certainly a labor of love that you have to certainly want to do. It has to be kind of part of your DNA, so to speak. For me, my personal journey coming from, I was born in New York City, raised in Jersey, and came to the Valley in '91 to go to school. And I think throughout my time in education, I was fortunate to have individuals who cared about me, not just two loving parents, but a number of individuals in my schools who saw something in me, who mentored me, who truly believed in that African proverb that it takes a village to raise a child. And they wrapped their arms around me and pushed me, kicked me in the butt when I needed it, and truly are responsible for helping me achieve everything that I've achieved. So I think I'm a testament to a community wrapping its arms around kids and making sure that they don't fall through the cracks. Because I certainly had friends who had every bit of potential that I did, and unfortunately fell victim to a lot of societal woes, and weren't able to achieve the things that I've achieved, unfortunately. So it is a absolute need for us to think about the way in which we work with students, we nurture them, we pull the best out of them, we hold high expectations for them, and we provide the right environment so that they can grow and thrive. And specific to your question, that's been my experience, and that's helped me develop and do what I've done.
Thank you. And I think what came out of as I listened to both gentlemen here, I think about sort of the environments in which, including myself, a lot of our kids from urban areas come from. And in terms of the school, sometimes it's it becomes the one structure, or one of the structures, one of the places, one of the institutions, one of the most stable institutions in a community, where our students can go and find caring, concerned, nurturing adults. So my point is, the school, especially right now, the K-12 school, is a place in the community that is needed, probably more than ever. Next question. And I'm going to go to Dr. Bailey first on this one. How have you increased academic achievement at your school? And whether that's test scores, graduation rates, college attendance, or other indicator, how have you increased academic achievement?
So I think, unfortunately, in education, we have spent a great deal of time doing good work, but I don't always think it's necessarily pushed in the right direction. What I mean by that is we've spent a lot of time looking at curriculum, looking at approaches to instruction, and all those things are important, but we haven't put the amount of time in looking at relationships, of looking at connecting with kids, that really are the things that make the difference. At Liberty, our mission is passion and purpose. And so we talk about that we want every kid, before they walk across the stage, to be able to identify their passion and purpose. We define passion as what you love, not necessarily what job you want to do. And purpose is what you want to do with what you love, how you want to use your passion to make your school, your community, your country, your world a better place. And so as we do that work, those other things improve. Attendance improves. Their performance in class improves, because they're connected to our schools, because they feel loved, because they feel connected to not just our school overall, but individuals within our school. And so we've spent a lot of time making sure that we do that work. And as we put time into those areas, those other things have improved. Now, I'm also fortunate that I'm in a district where the Bethlehem School District, we're not afraid to try things. We're not afraid to really get our hands dirty and dig in. And so, our district is doing things like, reading by grade 3 and trauma-informed schools and restorative practices. So we've put a lot of these things in place that need to scaffold for our kids to be successful. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to relationships. And if you do the work on that end, kids will be successful. If you put the time in on that person-to-person connection, students will rise. So that's where we put our time.
Thank you, Dr. Bailey. The principal who hired me in my first K-12 teaching position told me, Floyd, these kids will run through a brick wall for you if they know that you care. Mm-hmm. But they got to know that you care about them. So I certainly appreciate your statements. Principal Gordon, how have you increased academic achievement at your school, whether it's test scores, graduation rates, or college attendance, whatever the case may be?
Yeah, I'm just going to say ditto to everything that Dr. Bailey said. So he pretty much mirrored exactly what my experience has been. One of the things that we took a look at, and Dr. Bailey mentioned previously about a labor of love, so when I walked into this program, it was a program that was on the verge of closing permanently. And one of the things that I noticed when I actually started speaking to the students, I started to realize just how fractured the community was. You had, teachers and students were not getting along. The teachers and the administration were not getting along. And certainly the kids had no love for the administration at the time. And so you can't accomplish anything with a fractured community where everybody's moving in their own separate directions or just in survival mode. And so the first question I asked in developing these relationships, as Dr. Bailey mentioned, is not just connecting with kids, but how do we get them to love the idea of school? We have to get the kids to love the idea of school, but we have to also listen to them. So we really use the process of student voices to not only connect with kids and develop those relationships, but also how to use that as an opportunity to motivate and really get them to love the idea of school. Once we started to do that, we also wanted to take a look at now that reflective accountability as well. Taking a look at teacher efficacy. and looking at our practices. You know, are we up to the challenge of knowing what the challenge is, and whether or not we're genuinely actually putting those practices, you know, in place every single day? Is it organic to the systems and to the community that we serve? And so we had to make sure that we're taking a look at making sure we had the best teachers in place. And unfortunately, there were some very hard conversations that had to be had with certain teachers. I had a teacher who had over 25 years of experience, and I literally had to ask him to leave because, you know, you were not in the best position to move in the direction of the mission that we're trying to develop here at the school. And so we, you know, we call that, you know, having some come to Jesus talks, as we say, you know, in the church. And so, you know, you have to be willing to have those very tough conversations with people and really lay down your non-negotiables on how children are going to be treated and how they're going to have a voice in the building. You know, so I can teach you how to teach. I can't teach you how to get along with students. And so that's just non-negotiable for me. You know, we also took a look at really having an objective viewpoint, looking at data. You know, like what's happening there. You know, the school closing was not by accident. It wasn't picked out of a hat. There's a reason why. And so teachers had to know that there was that there's a objective viewpoint that people are looking at as to why the school was not being seen as being very effective. And, you know, and getting teachers to understand that, because what I found was that teachers had no idea what the data that was being looked at, not just from the community, but also from the city government and also from the school district itself, as to why the school was selected for closure. And so once we started to get teachers involved in the whole data process and how we identify how kids are going to get supported, it really engaged the staff members to really start taking ownership as to what were some of the challenges that were in the building. So, and then we also, you know, similar to what Dr. Bailey was talking about, his passion and purpose, we also developed a program called Build Your Own Brand, where we actually individualized the learning process for a lot of our students and personalized it for them by identifying, you know, allowing students to identify for us, what is your passion? And then our job is to go out and develop community partnerships that allows for resources and allows for, you know, access to opportunities for students to be able to follow through with those passions by actually having hands-on opportunities outside of the school, you know, or bringing those resources into the school program so that students will be able to experience what those passions are and really make a solid choice as to whether or not they want to go in that direction. You know, so a lot of times when you ask a student what kind of career they want to follow through, they say the basics. I want to be a doctor, lawyer, teacher, you know, so nurse, whatever the case may be. But when we actually get students into actual hands-on opportunities and then expose them to a number of other college and career opportunities as well, you start to expose the kids to new experiences, and they start to really realize that there are other things that they can, you know, access and they never even thought of before. And so we do that with the students who decide they want to go down the track of being college ready, or there are some students who just want to go directly into the workforce, and we have a workforce development program so that we're able to personalize and individualize things for every single student in the building. So, and again, and lastly, as I mentioned, we just increased community partnerships significantly. You know, we have over 30 to 35 new partnerships over the course of the last 8 years, just allowing for opportunities for students to be able to have those access and opportunities and those pathways that they can actually follow through and actually see actual, you know, hands-on world experiences that they can actually get off campus. And it's not just something that they can see that's off to the distance. It's actually something that they can actually experience. And those were really some of the things that we really did to really kind of, you know, recognize that if we motivate the students in those various ways and actually engage our staff members to actually take ownership, what you find, as Dr. Bailey so adequately mentioned, the other things naturally start to increase because everyone's motivated to really to achieve at the highest levels.
Thank you. Thank you. This brings, I'm going to bring this back around to your personal journey a little bit. Why did you choose Lehigh University, and how did Lehigh contribute to your educational journey? I'm going to go back to Principal Gordon here.
No problem. So the collaboration between Lehigh University and the School District of Philadelphia, so I was part of the original program that was back in, you know, way back, you know, with the first grants. And what happened was, you know, I was given the opportunity to actually get, a master's degree at a very significant discounted price. So that was the first thing I thought about. I said, well, then the money attracted me. I was like, great, awesome. Let me take a look. And then, but what I found that as I continued to research the program and the obligations related to it, and people kept encouraging me to go in that direction because people saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. I recognized also at the time that Lehigh was also being recognized as being a top 25 college education program from across the country. So I was inspired because I was saying to myself, wow, like this, I'm a kid from Camden, New Jersey, and I get an opportunity to be able to attend one of the top schools in the country. It really attracted and motivated me to get in there. But I know that I got a lot more than I bargained for when I started to attend Lehigh University, because it really provided me the opportunity and taught me the importance of being very authentic. Make sure that I'm really presenting, and leading in a way that is the most authentic version of myself, and making sure that that my belief systems and what's right for kids was always your top priority. John Lewis always talked about getting into good trouble. And you have to identify what that good trouble is. Make sure that you are really being not just the academic, but also the moral leader, and making sure that the systems are not really harming our kids in a way that doesn't provide them the opportunity to get a solid education. And so sometimes, it takes you to really piss off, for a lack of a better term, those around you, those who are supervisors of you, to really get them to understand that point, that you're willing to fight for what's right for kids. And I really think that really learning that on Lehigh's campus, that understanding that is important and that is okay, has really made a difference in my professional journey up to this point.
Thank you. Thank you. And I would like to also reiterate, to this day, we still encourage our students to be the most authentic version of yourself in your leadership roles, and to carry that, the essence of what's best for kids wherever you go, in whatever leadership position you might be in. Dr. Bailey, why did you choose Lehigh University, and how did Lehigh contribute to your educational journey?
Sure. So originally, I had no desire to go into formal education. My plan after my undergrad was to go into public speaking. I originally wanted to travel to college campuses and give talks on masculinity, rape, and sexual harassment in America. And I was focused on that. Professor took me out to lunch and said, well, why should anybody listen to you? Like, who are you? And I said, well, you got a point. He said, you need to go to graduate school. You need to get a master's degree. And I said, oh, but you're absolutely right. And so I played some arena football for a while, and while I was in arena football, applied to Lehigh. I was, prior to leaving for arena football, I began as a instructional assistant, one-to-one for a student at Centennial School, part of Lehigh there. And so I went on, left Centennial, played football for a little bit, and then came back and began my journey at Centennial and Lehigh to get my master's, simply so that I had the credentials. And as I was there at Centennial and taking classes at Lehigh, I started to see pretty quickly that I loved it, that I was connecting with kids, that I was impacting their lives, that I could truly make a difference for some struggling students. And so by the end of my master's degree, I met a professor, Dr. Bond, who taught the multicultural class there, multicultural leadership there at Lehigh. And he took me out to lunch and said, well, you should think about this administrative thing. And I said, all right, I'll give it a try. And I did. I took another year at Centennial and became a master teacher. And I said, you could do this public speaking thing and be an administrator at the same time. And so I leaped off the ledge, so to speak. And quite a few decades have passed ever since. But I can say that the professors that I had at Lehigh truly left an impact. Perry Zorkel, Dr. Bell, Dr. White. I mean, these people truly cared, truly invested their time, truly wanted to see us be the very best educators that we could. And so their contributions to us have truly put us in positions to be successful. I know that without a doubt that they have left an impact on me so that I can impact others. And so that has been my journey through Lehigh. And again, it was never about becoming a formal educator until it did, because it was not the original plan. But we make plans and God laughs, I guess, right? So.
Well, Dr. Bailey, as I say, sometimes the education bug bites you, and once it gets a hold of you, it just doesn't let go. I was a business administration major, undergrad, my freshman year. In other words, I didn't know what I wanted to do. My mom was a teacher, and I had been around education all my life. And in some moment, I decided, well, I like history. Well, let me go into social studies education. Got into it, loved it, and I won't say how many years later, but I'm still here in one way, shape, or form. So, education can certainly carry the day. I've got one more written question here, but I do want us all to ponder a question. There's a question I had in my bigger list. I had a bigger question. You don't have to answer this, but I do want us to all kind of ponder this one. To ponder the idea in how Lehigh University can help further support these great leaders in the work that they're currently doing and nurture the next cohort, the next generation of leaders. In the last, at least the last year or so, I know that we've had at least 4 or 5 new administrators, like newly minted administrators, some in the Lehigh Valley, others in other places. But I want us all to think about how we can support these leaders, because I think our real impact is, as we prepare these leaders and they work with their teachers and their staff, we're going to impact thousands and thousands of students, but it's all going to be, the impact is going to come through this prism of leadership, and how well we can prepare folks, and how well we prepare folks depends on all of us on this call. We need your support. We need your influence. We need your good word. We just, we need you. So I just wanted to put that plug in there. Next question. What has been, now folks, I also do a monthly vodcast and podcast. Bill, I'm not putting a commercial in here for it, but I'm going to make it make sense. I do a monthly vodcast and podcast, and we usually ask at least one challenging question. So here's the challenging question for Dr. Bailey first. What has been your greatest challenge? And we'll do 2, your greatest challenge and your greatest achievement as a school leader.
Sure. I would say that my greatest challenge, and I would speak for the consortium of principals that I meet with every month here in the Lehigh Valley, is dealing with the mental health challenges of our students and our staff and families, for that matter. Mental health, and specifically dealing with trauma and toxic stress, it was at epidemic levels before the pandemic. And most people, a lot of people live in their bubbles and may not really know, but it truly has been at epidemic levels prior to. And so now our students have experienced this pandemic and the traumas that go along with it, the isolation that goes along with it, and now they're returning to schools. And quite frankly, there are many schools. I would venture to say thousands upon thousands of schools in this country that have no access to mental health services for their students. I don't know how they're going to survive. I truly don't. But it is an absolute epidemic, and if we don't do something about it soon, we're going to see the end result of that. And so dealing with that has been my greatest challenge. And fortunately, we've been able to get a lot of work done on that front and get out in front of this at Liberty and establish our wellness center and have 4 social workers here and occupational therapy here, and create something that's lasting. We've been able to get in front of some of politicians in our area who have supported us and made some headway. But it is absolutely, bar none, the greatest challenge. In terms of the greatest achievement, besides our wellness center, I'd say is for the past decade, I've been the co-chair of the Multicultural Student Leadership Conference, which Dr. Beachum, you've been at and participated in. But that venture brings together students each year, around 200 students from 17, 18 different high schools. And our mission is to take students of all different backgrounds, all different experiences, bring them together and teach them how to be leaders. Because the reality is every day we put students in positions to lead, but we don't teach them what leadership is. You know, we make you the captain of a team. We make you the president of the class. We do these things, but we don't really teach you about what that means, what the responsibilities and expectations are of leaders. And so we bring these students together for a full-fledged professional conference. We bring in speakers, workshops. We do a college and career fair where we bring, 60 different universities and career options together. And we have an incredible day of development for those students. And they leave being significantly impacted. And we always hear back from them. And so we know that we're doing good work. So I would say that that's probably my greatest challenge and my greatest achievement.
Thank you. And I'll say personally that is a very, very influential and powerful event. And what I liked about it, it brought together, it wasn't just Bethlehem, it was from students from across Lehigh Valley. It brought together students from different schools. And that was unique, and when we did it on the campus of Lehigh, at least when I was there, and it was a fabulous event. All right, Principal Gordon, same question. What has been your greatest challenge and achievement as a school leader?
All right. So I'm going to stop following Dr. Bailey because he keeps stealing my thunder, but but I have to connect with what he just said. I think my biggest challenge and my biggest achievement are really the same. It's really in a high poverty community where students not only see poverty at home, but they also see poverty at school. How do you get kids to believe that get students, our most vulnerable students, those who are predominantly minority, predominantly socioeconomically disadvantaged, to believe that they are just as good, just as intelligent, has just as much potential as any other student, not just across the city of Philadelphia, but beyond. And I think that that's been my biggest challenge, and I'll have to say my biggest success is to watch kids grow and believe that they can do it. We have, when we get our kids, and the first thing we start taking a look at when we start looking, gathering data and taking account as to what their educational experiences have been prior to them arriving to Robeson, we identify that really 90% of our kids are below basic in math and science. And so our students struggle in math, and they come in with the idea that they hate math, they hate science. And it's not that they hate math and hate science, they just haven't had many great experiences when it comes to learning math and science. And so those are just small examples of what kids, the baggage they bring with them when they walk into our doors. They bring that trauma into their doors, where maybe there are some negative experiences, adverse experiences that they had in their previous school communities, and they bring a lot of those habits to our doors as well. And so we let them know that you don't have to act that way. You don't have to respond that way. You don't have to be that way. There are other options and other pathways for you to take and take advantage of. And to get kids to believe that they can be great students and great citizens is always our biggest challenge and also our biggest success, because it's allowed the opportunity for kids to be able to grow and flourish and be involved in a number of things and see themselves in not just the experiences that they're having, but also see themselves in the students that have come before them. To be able to have students to know that in this small school, yes, you can go to the University of Clemson, you can go to Clemson University, You can go to Penn State University. You can go to Pittsburgh University, University of Pittsburgh. So from this very small school, and it's an opportunity, and those students come back and always speak in front of our students. To watch our students, to be able to see them like to just glow and be such full of pride when they see our school mentioned on the local news, or they're sending me videos and they're like, "Oh my God, Mr. Gordon, I saw you on the news the other day." And they said, "That's my principal. Oh my God, this is so great." Because it's part of the school pride, let them know that they're part of something special, and that we're all part of something that's bigger than all of us individually. To know that, to have our students be so proud of the fact of us being featured on Good Morning America and MSNBC, and have a national platform to have discussions about education. These are things that started out with students who came in struggling, not believing that they can contribute to not just the school community, but also believing that they can make an impact in their own lives, while at the same time we provide those supports to help them cope with those traumas that Dr. Bailey talked about. And so those things are extremely important. Yes, we can always talk about curriculum and talk about, instructional delivery, but if we don't get to the hearts and minds of our students and our families and letting them know that they have the opportunity to be just as good as anybody who's attending a magnet school here in the city of Philadelphia and beyond, then we're not going to be able to affect change the way that we want to and hope to. And so we're just so proud of just being able to connect with our kids and let them know that they have the opportunity to come here and to be the best, and we have evidence to prove it.
Dr. Beachum.
Thank you. Well stated.
Dr. Beachum, may I follow Gordon on this? Mr. Gordon?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I love that, right? That whole point of getting kids to believe in themselves and to believe that they're worthy, right, of the education that we can deliver to them is so critical. And the thing I've noticed in education is, for many, many decades, what we've told students of color and students who live in poverty is that education is your way out of the community, right? Out of. And that has been so detrimental to the development of not just that child, but our communities. What we should be telling them is education is your way to improve, right? Your way to build up and support your community, right? So that you go get that education and come back and become the leader in your community, right? Because otherwise what we're telling them is where they're from isn't worth anything, right? Where they're from is something that they need to escape, versus that they have a responsibility to their community. And so to build on what Principal Gordon just said, I just think as we help them start to figure out who they are and what they're worth, we then have to instill in them that they have a responsibility to give back and be a part of it, right? So that we continue to build on it. And we've done a massive disservice in education in the way in which we've handled that over probably the past couple 100 years.
Yes, and that's
if I can just if I could just chime in real quickly, what both of you are talking about reminds me so much of Cloud Steele's work on stereotype threat, and the way in which that's a huge barrier for kids that have to overcome when a society teaches a BIPOC kid, an African-American kid, that you don't count, or you can't do this, or people like you can't do this. That's such a negative hedge in terms of their development. And so much of what is particular, I think, to urban education is addressing that, making that explicit, and recognizing that all people have those doubts about themselves, and yet you have to get over that and move ahead with confidence. So what both of you are saying, I think, really points to that research that's been done. And we actually have Cloud Steele's student on the psychology faculty, Valerie Taylor, who's doing work in virtual reality, the way in which that can construct and deconstruct stereotype threat. I just wanted to add that in, so sorry.
And look, I've been doing this long enough to realize, you don't step on a good message. So I don't think I have any other summative kinds of statements. So at this point, I'm going to certainly thank our panelists. I think we have some other questions popping in too. So Annie, I didn't know how you want to do this next part. You want to help facilitate these? I think we have some additional questions.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm just looking at Sue's comments. I couldn't agree with you more, Sue. How can we teach our teachers to excel in these more emotionally based skills to help our students succeed? And how do you get school boards to incorporate these non-academic skills into our curriculum? So for the first one, I don't know who wants to shout out there.
I think here we've just let the kids speak. So we when we started out on this mission to become a trauma-informed school, which, by the way, is a journey, not a destination. Um, we surveyed our kids and we said, what's going on in your life, right? What are the challenges that you're seeing? And they've reported it. And, our kid, one thing I tell you, urban kids, if you ask them, they're going to tell you. And they told us loud and clear what the concerns were, what they were facing every day, what was hurting them. And so we used that data and showed our school board and showed our superintendent, and there was no, I mean, you can't hide from it. It's what it is. And so I think once you help people see that it's a concern, once you help people understand that it's there, and they can't, put their head in the sand, they want to help. When I met with my parents, and most of these were parents who, we in Bethlehem, we have a very, very diverse community. So we have some who have a whole lot and some who have nothing. And so, financially. So, when I met with a lot of those parents, and I explained to them what was happening and what our students were saying, and they bent over backwards. They wanted to know, how can I help? How can I get involved? How can I do something about this? So I think a lot of it's just making sure that people understand what's happening in the brains and bodies and lives of our kids. Once they hear it, and once it becomes a reality, it's hard to refute, and most people want to help. So that was the way we got the ball rolling, and it kind of took on a life of its own.
Thank you. So Bob asks, this is a great question too, is there any formal, informal feedback loop between leaders in urban education? Like the communication flows, and what are your thoughts on that?
Is it feedback loop between
leaders in urban education?
Well, it depends on like who's on the other end of the flow. Urban education is such a broad, concept, because it depends on which constituencies you're talking about. Again, you talk about the school board, you talk about supervisors, so I just know from, again, as Dr. Bailey really mentioned, I think that the feedback that I often put out there and the conversations that I'm having now is really around not only just how we support kids, but also how we also advocate for children. And we have to have these very tough conversations that sometimes are more on the financial, political, and community side on what's happening, in their neighborhoods, what's happening with their families, what's happening in their social circles, but also, what's happening with how schools are funded and how there's inequity taking place within the systems. And so, again, it depends on the constituencies that you're referring to, but I know one of the things that I often do, whether it's locally or, I've had conversations with associations in other states where I'm advocating with the inequities that are currently in the systems where I can't believe that I'm in a singular system that has over 200 schools, and you can literally go to 2 different schools in 2 different neighborhoods and feel like that you're in 2 different areas. And so that is the biggest challenge that I see ahead of us, because now that COVID has really exposed that over the course of the last year and a half, we have to make sure that we're always having those very tough conversations and know that financing and supporting schools financially and allowing, because there are some schools who can fundraise with their alumni because their alumni, are professionals, where schools like ours, which are totally 100% socioeconomically disadvantaged, where our alumni program is not as robust. And so the question is, if we don't have a tax base that we're able to raise funds, then how do we ever address the issues of infrastructure in an equitable way that impacts more minority students, when the students that can actually raise funds on the side are able to do so, and they happen to be part of the majority.
And by the way, and Annie, that feedback loop also, by the way, thank you, Richard. I was just looking at that. That feedback loop also goes from urban education, but also back to the College of Education, because
That's
I think,
education. Yeah.
yeah, as Bill was mentioning there, how do we connect these leaders to kind of what we're doing in the COE?
Yeah, and I would add to that, the Lehigh University School Study Council is one mechanism for that. So engaging people in the Lehigh Valley in conversations with what's going on at the university and opportunities for joint research and that sort of thing, as well as mounting programs. I think the other way that we can do it better, and I take the comment for what it is, which is it's a criticism of what's the decoupled way that universities have worked in communities. And that's something that we're trying to address at Lehigh, to be more integrated in the work of the community. And I would add that hiring faculty on as professors of practice who have a deep experiential base as classroom or district and building leaders is really an important piece, and why we're going out with another call for another professor of practice. We already have one in Dr. Brian Osborne. We're going to add another one, and we're going to continue to add to that part of the bench, as well as through adjunct professorship. So yeah, that's a super important point. And we have a lot of great people in EVL who are, sitting principals, sitting superintendents, and they need to bridge that gap that, is clearly a problem.
I would say that, as a principal, and I can't speak to what's happening in Philadelphia, but up here in the Lehigh Valley, we as principals connect quite often. Usually once a month we meet and really share ideas. And quite frankly, when we do that, it is the best professional development I get, to speak with other high school principals. But in terms of the connection between urban principals, in terms of the connection between principals of color, no, it's not happening, not nearly the way it should. We should be connecting a lot more. The difficulty in principalship is, schools are the everything for their communities now. We are everything. We feed them, we clothe them, we are their healthcare. This is not just, you come get educated. We do it all. And so as the principal, quite frankly, there isn't a whole lot of extra time if you want to have your own family to do that. So there's a lot of difficulty in terms of making those connections and maintaining them because there's so much on your plate. I was just doing and Principal Gordon is living this, right? I sat down, 2 nights ago to say, okay, what are the things I need to make sure I take care of in the next, 2 weeks before school starts? And the list kept going and going. I think I'm about 25, 26, right? Nothing's coming off. They just keep going on, right? So, the time to connect, right? The ability to do that in a way that doesn't, just take over your life is truly a challenge for educators in general and principals specifically.
Thank you. Bill, I think you said you had a question.
Yes, thank you. I feel I admire these 2 graduates of our college and feel very happy that we have such an outstanding College of Education here at Lehigh. And I feel particularly grateful that we have such an outstanding local school district, Bethlehem Area School District, with leadership of people like Harrison Bailey and Joe Roy and so on, and other principals that I've gotten to know. This is slightly off the side, but I think it's important. Yesterday evening, I was visited by an African-American friend who I see maybe a couple of times a year, and he, in his life, has acted as kind of an unofficial mentor for young men of color who have problems. And in our conversation, he was quite distraught because one of these young men that he knew well had been shot. There have been shootings. They happened to take place in Allentown, but this young man was from Bethlehem. And he was telling the story of this young fella, and he was a good guy. Now he was slightly older than high school age, but still a young man of color. Good guy, but he just was with the wrong people. And then his friend who ran away was then attacked at this guy's funeral by other friends because he ran away. And my friend, who's the mentor, was distraught. He says, all these young guys, they're just out there and they all have guns. And what do we do about that? Well, this isn't directly your challenge, but it is part of the community's challenge. And obviously, you're dealing, some of these kids are still in school, maybe most of them are out of school, but how do we as a community deal with situations like that?
If I may, it is our challenge because, again, we talk about providing access and opportunities for students, because those things are happening as a result of decades and decades of poverty that has never been, in inequities in our current systems that have never been addressed. And so you got to think of it in terms of that when you don't address these issues, and they've been existing for so long, the economic gap is a result of the haves and the have-nots. The haves have really had a head start more than anything else. Even in terms of just how schools are just funded is an issue. You know, Dr. Billy has a great campus. I'm not saying that he has, you know, the most affluent students, but at least, you know, he has a school board and a system that is put in place an opportunity for him to have a great campus. And so he has somewhere great for the kids to be able to come, where I'm existing in a retrofitted garage. And this has been going on for the longest time. And you have, you know, we all heard about Wilt Chamberlain, who came from Overbrook High School, and Will Smith, who went to Overbrook High School. And Overbrook High School used to have 3,000 kids. They're down to 400 and the building's falling apart. But if you go 10 miles to Lower Marion away, you know, they're quite affluent. You know, these inequities are really driving a lot of the violence and a lot of the social ills and dysfunctional dynamics that our students are experiencing every day. And so what's happening with these shootings and with, you know, all the things that are, and all the traumas that our kids are experiencing, they are a result of our inability to address these issues and equalize the playing field. And so we're not going to be able to do that if we're not all getting involved. It also takes the opportunity that, you know, Dr. Bailey and I will always try and do our very best to be mentors to all students. But we also know that as we're creating these opportunities, we also are going to need, you know, all of our partners and advocates and supporters, even from the white community, to help us get into the rooms of other individuals, you know, that are in other rooms that are dominated by, you know, individuals that are in leadership who are Caucasian, to be able to have the same conversations and say, hey, these individuals are having this kind of impact at Robeson, or, you know, or at Liberty, but, you know, can you also decide that you're going to get involved with this school over here or that school over there? It's going to take a comprehensive plan for everyone to get involved. And we, you know, so, and again, as the, you know, Black and brown communities are always coming together to come up with ideas on how to address this, we also need to collaborate also with, you know, with the white community as well, and get us into the rooms where we can actually start garnering resources to help support institutions all throughout. Dr. Beachum talked about the need for schools. You know, I look at schools like churches and other, you know, they're anchor institutions. They are anchors in the community. And if we don't take care of our anchor institutions, this is the chaos that you get. And it's only going to get worse until we start looking at schools in that fashion.
I agree with that wholeheartedly, Principal Gordon. And in addition, I would say that you know, we unfortunately live in a system in which those that have the power to make decisions about education, about what happens to children, usually don't live proximate to the individuals they're making decisions about, right? And so when you don't, you know, Brian Stevenson and Dr. Adondre talk about this all the time, about, you know, you have to be proximate to those areas in which you're going to make decisions that impact, you know, that receive that impact. And that often is not the case. And so if you're not going to be proximate, then at the very least, you need to listen to those individuals that are. And that just does not happen. So that's part of why, I mean, I fought to get a seat in front of our local legislatures so that they hear from people who are on the ground. But that needs to happen at our state level. That needs to happen at the federal level. Look, this is what's really happening in the lives of our kids. I think until people are willing to really listen at that level, we're going to continue to struggle with this type of stuff. We have to open our eyes and face that these are those conditions. The other piece of it is I say that, a lot of kids who are in those situations, everyone's looking for connection. Everyone's looking to be, physically and emotionally connected to another human being. It's biological. It's not psychological. It's biological. We have to be. We are a connected, right, species, right? And so when we're not, trouble happens. And so if I'm going to find that connection, if I don't find it in a positive way, I'm going to find it in a negative way. And that's what's happening, right? So, these are people who are going to take me in, and they're going to, it may be what other people consider a warped way of love, but it's what I believe is love at this point, right? And so I'm going to connect with them. And so that's going to yield some negative outcomes. So we have to find more opportunities for these individuals to connect with positive people, right? To connect with those people who are doing things that want to help them be productive and do some great things with their lives and believe in them. And quite frankly, we have chosen not to invest in that. We have chosen as a society not to invest. And so this is what we see. This is what we get. We have to make some better decisions if we choose. The two groups that we really, care the least about, the young and the old, right? And look where they end up. And so until we decide we're going to do better, until we decide we're going to put our resources, our time, our energy, right, and devote our lives to the young and see better outcomes, that we're going to continue to see what you're describing.
Annie, can I jump in here, please? There are some questions in the chat box. I don't know whether you looked at those or not. But first of all, congratulations to both of you for wonderful work. And to your recent comments about Dr. Bailey about where the decisions are made. Black Lives Matter from the time they're 4 or 5 years old. And the way to cure the inequality problem starts when those kids are 5 years old or 6 years old. When we get the educational system and close the achievement gap, until we do that, it's very tough sledding. And I would suggest Beal and anyone talking about community involvement, Google Pastor Corey Brooks and see what he's done in Chicago to turn around a neighborhood. Pastor Corey Brooks. He's done wonderful things. It's an extremely hard thing to do. Anyway, and I have one more question quickly. What do you guys have in your schools in terms of professional development to help these teachers develop those soft skills that, they don't necessarily learn in the classroom? Thank you.
As far as that's concerned, I have to admit, I actually run a lot of that because one of the things that I wanted to make sure that when I first got to my school is that I modeled exactly what the behaviors are supposed to be like when it comes to how we relate to our students and our families. And like I said, it also required a lot of group and individual conversations that had to happen. Now it's a little easier for me because I have a very small school, but a lot of times I just wanted our teachers to have the benefit of my experience, but I also know that there were, again, with a good portion of our teachers being Caucasian and our students being 95%, African-American, and of course the other 5% were either Asian or of mixed race. There were still some sensitivities, cultural sensitivities that had to be, addressed as well. And so we've had our challenges with that as well. But the fortunate thing is, because I've been able to sit where the students are and I've been able to sit where the teachers are, it's been really easy for me to kind of bridge that gap. And so I really run a lot of that social emotional learning, that sensitivity that's needed amongst our staff and model that based on my own personal experiences. But also, I've also had the benefit of experience, not just here in Philadelphia, but also in the city of Baltimore and also in Washington, D.C. as well.
At Liberty, we're just the opposite. We're a very, very large school. We have about 2,800 students, and with between teachers and support staff, I have about 300 staff. So, we do a lot of programmatic stuff in that vein. So when I talk about being a trauma-informed school, we've created our own professional development as a school, and delivered that to our staff, and that includes our secretaries, our custodians, et cetera. And that's all about really looking at each case and each student and knowing that instead of seeing them as what's wrong with you, as what happened to you, right? And approaching it that way, that as the staff member, it's not about you, right? So remove yourself from the equation, right? And so we've done that formally and informally. And we're also a restorative high school. So if you look at the International Institute of Restorative Practices, which is located, fortunately for us, here in Bethlehem as the headquarters, we are a restorative high school. And so that again looks at the approach to how we work with students, restoring harm when harm is done, taking responsibility for our actions and those types of things. And so that's been done both with our students and our staff. So there's a lot of scheduled formal professional development for our teachers that we have to do because that is the precursor to academic success. And so that's been a major focus of our superintendent and myself as principal.
And just add one more thing, a lot of the work is also on in the front, also making sure that your hiring practices are also very specific in terms of what it is you're looking for, in terms of personalities and people's willingness, because again, I find it's just a lot of challenge when you just have individuals who just are unwilling, they're or in some cases even unable, and so you got to make sure that you have very specific hiring protocols, and a lot of those protocols really were developed a lot by the teachers as well. Teachers hire teachers. So I don't meet with candidates. We're hiring for a new candidate. I don't meet with candidates until the teachers have screened them first, and and they're very particular about who they're going to work with. So because they understand the approaches that we're trying to take when it comes to how we're addressing not just only students but also families as well.
Thank you both so much for being here with us today. Just hearing you talk, you talked about including the stakeholders. Excuse me, knowing yourself, knowing your values, being your true authentic self and caring about the student and that accountability and knowing the data too. That's exactly what we talk about in a leadership program now today. I'm in those classes. So thank you again. I just want to be respectful of everyone's time. I'm going to do some follow-up with you after the event and get your thoughts and feedback. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to any of us. And thank you again, and we'll see you soon.